Hello YouTube, this is Asmodeus, and I will be bringing you some Tiger 1 gameplay, and hopefully followed by a garage review. Let's see, this is currently a ×5 weekend, so I'm not looking forward to any good gameplay anytime soon. So don't expect that too. I haven't completely come to grips with the Tiger. Yes, it's mostly upgraded, but I cheat and use free XP. Wahahaha. But as it stands, the Tiger's not a bad tank. It's squishy outside of it being a top tier and only one of a few tier 7s in a match, which is clearly not the case here. But mostly, this tank needs to be used as a sniping tank, first and foremost. That's what it's good at, and just how it should be used, in my opinion. Play a tank to its strengths, not its weaknesses. It's not a frontline brawler like the IS-2, or it's not your typical heavy tank. At least not for gameplay. Gameplay wise, like I said, this is more of a sniper. Another vehicle type that one could draw comparisons to is the American tank destroyers with turrets, where they typically don't have front armor until you get up into tier 8. So yeah, just play it like a tank destroyer, where you don't want to be the first one spotted and kind of sit back and take shots at whatever pokes up. Unlike that Tiger driver, who is trying to be a frontline heavy in a game where pretty much anything can kill him. But hey, if he can make it work, more power to him. Fortunately, sitting back and trying to get the snipes is not happening where I'm at. So I'm going to try and swing wide, and try and remain undetected for as long as possible, so I can get set up into a good sniping position, and hopefully take advantage of any inattentiveness my enemy team players exhibit. It seems to be working so far so good. I must say, I'm quite surprised I got all the way across that open ground without getting shot. And I say that right as my luck changes. But that could have gone a lot worse than it did. So I'm going to try and use this rock as cover. No. I got something on that back ridge line that I cannot see. But T-34 not seem to be interested in me at the moment. Back up. Try and get away from his gun, but that didn't work. Hit him pretty square that time. Oh bother. He can see me just fine. Just trying to get into a spot where I'm safe, and Artie gets me. Oh dear. Well, I guess that's what I get for trying to be cheeky. Yeah. That did not end so well. But the team's doing okay. And I guess this guy was slightly smarter in his approach than I was. I don't expect that T-69 to let him live for much longer. Matter of fact, he seems to be completely ignoring the Tiger and the IS and going for the Tiger, which was his death. Well played. Let's see. Nope, nothing really else happening there. So we go back to the garage. That was some rather poor gameplay on my behalf. Anywho, even though the tank's in battle, we can still take a look at its details. Historically, the Tiger 1 was the first true heavy tank ever produced, then later mass produced, though mass production's kind of a joke in a way, considering not too many of them were ever built. For one, they're a huge drain on a country's resources, both during production and during maintenance and whatnot. Secondly, Germany really didn't have the production facilities and the number of people to really crank these out in huge numbers like what you've seen with the American M4 Shermans and the Russian T-34s. Another problem historically with the Tiger was that it was over-engineered. A lot of its parts were very, very specific to that type of tank. So the problem that comes along with that is you can't swap parts out with existing models. Like, say, if you have a busted road wheel on a Tiger, you couldn't take one off of a Panzer IV and slap it on there and go. And the same with other tanks like the Panther and later King Tigers and stuff like that. All of those parts were exclusive to those tanks. Now the problem that brings up is if you start losing production facilities that tailor to those specific parts, there's no way you can manufacture new tanks effectively or repair ones that are currently in service. Like, there you go. Those road wheels, and this is off of a late model Tiger, you can tell that because there's no rubber on the road wheels, but if one of those was shot out or broke or whatever the hell goes on in battle, that Tiger would be crippled and could be sitting in a maintenance bay for weeks waiting for new parts to come in to fix that road wheel. Because every single one of those lug nuts that you can kind of see right in there, the center lug, all of the ones on the outside as well, all of those were specifically manufactured to fit that part. Same with the road or the drive wheels, the guide wheel, all of that. Even the track links were specific to the Tiger and other various German tanks that Germany started producing towards the end of the war. Along with that specific tailoring of parts comes into problems with engineering. The Germans wanted to produce tanks that were ideally far superior to anything that they would face on the battlefield, and in that superiority be able to take out tons and tons of other tanks to the loss of a single of theirs. And to an extent, they achieved that goal with the Tiger, because it was more than capable of knocking out any Allied tank on the battlefield. The problem with that strategy is, yeah, you got this great tank, but there's a few of them. We've got this good enough tank, and we've got thousands upon thousands of them. So the Tigers, Panthers, all that good stuff that the Germans put out was pretty much overran on the ground. And all kinds of other problems came up later in the war as well. Wargaming doesn't have this modeled in, but German panzers from 1943 on, I believe, if I remember correctly, my history could be wrong on this one, used to have a machine gun up here for the commander. And what that machine gun was for is so the commander could poke out, get on that machine gun, and start shooting at enemy aircraft that were strafing their tanks. Now, that's all fine and dandy, but really, kind of a useless afterthought. Or it could also be used for close-in fighting, where you've got multiple people coming in from multiple directions, so you can't have the coaxial, the whole dealing with all the threats at once. The commander could then also pop up and start shooting. But that's what the machine gun that was actually on there was supposed to do. Wargaming hasn't modeled it in because it's really just a waste of data and completely unnecessary. Though there are a few tanks that have them modeled in, most notably the IS-7. But we're not talking about the IS-7, we're talking about the Tiger. In game, the Tiger is, how to put that? It's on par and lacking at the same time with its Tier 7 brethren. And what I mean by that is, by paper stats, it's perfectly on par with its counterparts. As a matter of fact, it has the most hit points of any Tier 7 heavy, but in game, it kind of falls short of what the other Tier 7s can do. This is more of a specialist tank in game. And by that I mean it's a sniper. It excels at long range combat, but up close it starts to fall short, and it's primarily down to its armor. Now, historically, the Tiger was one of the hardest tanks the Germans had to take out from the perspective of other tanks, and it was because of that armor. The T-34s and Shermans could just plug away all day at the front of a Tiger, and they wouldn't do anything to it. The Tiger would just shrug them off, fire them once, and whatever it was shooting at would pretty much evaporate. In-game doesn't quite work like that. Wargaming has a hit point system, and the Tiger's gun does not one-shot kill very many tanks. It won't see any of the tanks that it can one-shot unless you got somebody derping around bringing tanks up in tiers, which does happen from time to time, either because people want to troll their team, or because you got some well-intentioned friend trying to help another friend out and goofs up and has something with a higher matchmaking, which does happen a bit, not very often, at least not at Tier 7 area level of play, but still. Anywho, looking at the stats, as I said, the Tiger has the most hit points for any of the tier 7s. This is heavies, mediums, tanks, destroyers, and artillery. Yes, even tier 7 artillery has less hit points than the tier 7 heavy. But that aside, 1450 is a pretty decent plug of armor. It's actually 50 points less than the tier 8 Russian heavy, the IS-3. But yeah, we're talking about the Tiger, not IS-3s. Weight limit, my current configuration is 56.9 tons. This is not a fully upgraded Tiger quite yet. I still need to get the final engine, which will add, well, here, we'll just pull that up, an additional 120 horsepower to the Tiger. Granted, that speed limit's never going to go up, but it will help increase the power to weight ratio, which will in turn help the Tiger accelerate a bit faster. The Tiger's slow, but it's not that slow. 30 kph is actually quite good. What kind of limits that good top speed, especially for such a heavy tank, is that low traverse speed. Only 24 degrees per second. And once again, historically, the Tigers weren't known for being able to turn very fast. As a matter of fact, that was one of the biggest complaints the drivers of the Tigers had. It's just how hard it was to get the Tiger to turn about. And the steering mechanism on the Tigers would more often not break because the tank was so heavy, and whatever mechanisms they were using in there, I'd assume hydraulic, wasn't up to snuff to help the Tiger maximize on that powerful engine it has. It's 750 to 870 horsepower is phenomenal. But that steering is prohibited from being able to turn very well, and Wargaming has put that in there as such, 24 degrees per second, which I believe, to be fairly honest with it, it does represent a weakness the Tiger had. Hull armor and turret armor are identical, 100 at the front, 82 at the sides and rear. It's okay for its tier, great if it's top dog. Anything other than that, it's like, might as well be Swiss cheese. Turret traverse, 23 degrees per second, once again, pretty low. But the slow turning speed is quite typical for German tanks in game. And also historically accurate, maybe not down to the nearest number, but once again, that's just an in-game numerical representation of the fact that the Tiger's turrets did not turn very fast. And you'll see a lot of rookie players pulling rookie mistakes with this tank, or most German tanks in general, is that they'll try and turn the turret to whatever's trying to get on their side and rear, and the turret will not track it unless it's another very, very slow tank, say like a Churchill Mark 7. And another historical fact is rookie Tiger crews that didn't have combat experience and were still fairly fresh with the machine outside of their basic training, once again no combat experience, they would turn the turret. And you'll see Tigers side on shooting at targets in war movies and stuff, actual historical war documentation movies. Tigers could actually get away with that a bit more than their brethren because of the gun, but we'll get to that a little later. Actually, no, we'll touch on it right at the moment. The gun on the Tiger let it engage at extreme distances. We're talking distances well over a mile, close to 2 miles. And to put that in perspective, if you were to try and look at something, let's say, roughly twice the size of a standard passenger minivan. Actually, no, let's revise that. Let's just say something size-wise comparable to a semi-tractor, which is the truck that pulls a trailer, the big long ones, semi-trucks as people know them here in the stateside. Try finding something 3/4 to half that size, which is about accurate for the T-34s. In the Shermans, through a what are those things called? Paper towel roll, the little cardboard piece inside. Try looking at a semi-tractor 2 miles away through one of those. I believe that would give fair, accurate representation of what looking through the gunner's periscope or even combat sighting on would be like. And for those of you that do not know what combat sighting is, it's where the gunner will look through the barrel of the cannon to see his target. You try doing that at a mile and a half, 2 miles, and doing that accurately, consistently hitting and knocking out your targets, you'll start to gain a healthy respect for the Tiger drivers, specifically the Tiger gunners. Now, due to the limitations of Wargaming's game engine, we don't have maps that big. But bearing that in mind, I believe Wargaming has fairly well represented the Tiger's ability for long-range engagements by giving it one of the best view ranges in the game, 370 meters. Now that may not sound like a lot compared to the ranges I was talking about on the historical Tigers, but the thing to bear in mind is the maps on Wargaming implies are typically 1 by 1 kilometer in length. So that's any given distance, 1,000 meters one way, 1,000 meters the other on an XY axis. Even then, it does sound kind of low, but trust me, it is a very, very good view range. Considering the top view ranges in the game are maybe 40 to 50 meters longer than this. And we're talking tier 10 tanks that barely can outsee what the Tiger sees. And those are the best tanks in the game. This is only a tier 7, so that's actually quite good. Coupled with that very good view range, it also has a 710 meter signal range, which spans most any area on the map. So whatever gets spotted within 710 meters and up to 445 to 500 meters of the Tiger is easily viewable by the Tiger. It can see and shoot things over 370 meters, so long as somebody else is spotting them. It can spot 370 meters on its own, is what I'm implying there. Which is quite good. Anywho, getting sidetracked here. Now we'll be looking at the gun. We have the historical Tiger's gun. This is the gun the Tigers actually carried into battle, like Operation Barbarossa, Kursk, even on the Western Front versus the allies. The German 88 centimeter KWK 43 L-71. In game, it has a fire rate just under 7 rounds a minute. Keep in mind that is for 100% crew. 203 millimeter average penetration, 240 average damage. Just great penetration, average damage. The only thing that has a higher alpha damage would be the IS. That is perfectly on par with pretty much everything else in Tier 7, as in terms of your lights, mediums, heavies, and tank destroyers. Really, only the Russians have the higher the alpha damage. It has 0.34 accuracy at 100 meters, which is extremely good. And if I remember correctly, that number means within the aiming circle at 100 meters, that shot will only deviate 0.34 meters at 100 meters. 0.34 is extremely tight area for shell deviation. And what that translates to is odds are whatever that gun's pointing at and wherever you have your aiming reticle is where that's going to hit. It has an aiming time of 2.9 seconds, which is quite fast. The only thing that has faster aiming rate is the British Churchills and the Centurions, which have an aiming rate about a full second shorter, if I remember correctly. The weight, that only really translates into your ground resistance, which is a invisible stat that isn't published. It also could go towards your power to rate ratio, which isn't quite very important on a sniper tank per se, as it would be for a fast moving medium or light tank where you want more power to get you going faster and maintain your high speed. Not so important on this thing. This can actually get away with it, and in some instances it actually helps it if you go to RAM. Definitely not something I believe any Tiger should be in a position to do in 90% of your games, unless you're lucky and only get a Tier 7 max game all the time. And everything else below you is like Tier 5 and 6, with the occasional very unlucky Tier 4. I've played an absolutely donk of a game to open up with. That's been my average for this weekend. It is a ×5 event. So, yeah. Not expecting much good gameplay. Little fun fact for the history buffs. Michael Wittmann, Germany's leading tank ace, used to be the commander of a Tiger tank. I don't remember his assigned Tiger's number or any of his crew members, but he was one of the people first slotted to be put in one of these tanks. And I'm pretty sure that had a bit of propaganda value to the German administration. Because here you got your country's leading tank ace and this brand new wonder weapon, the Tiger. A tank so heavy and heavily armed that nothing the Russians threw at it could stop it. Of course, that was kind of a bull-faced lie. The Russians did, in fact, have stuff that could kill a tiger, but even then it was tough. Anywho, I'm pretty sure that had a bit of propaganda value. And when the Tigers first came out, only the best tank crews were allowed to even train to drive one of these tanks. Being a Tiger commander was an extreme honor. It was a testament of your skill. Well, you had most everybody else buzzing around in Panzer IIIs, 4s, and the little guys. You had your elite Panzer crews driving this. Oddly enough, though, the Tiger came out before the Panther, yet the Panther has a numerical designation one before the Tiger. I've never really understood why that was. No idea. But here she is in all of her beauty. The Panzerkampfwagen 6. The Tiger. A little rough around the edges, but she is beautiful. Though there are people that will scoff, laugh, and go, ha ha ha, shoebox on treads. Well, guess what? My shoebox has a very deadly 88mm cannon, and was a very successful tank design historically. Just look at that beautiful engineering. Though, unfortunately, I can't open up the back decks and show you what the engine looks like. Those were quite interesting, to say the least. Considering you take roughly from this part of the tank back to maybe a few inches to the rear of the tank, and from roughly there to there to there, that is all engine. Not much else on the inside of those. Got a couple cooling fans, if I remember right. No, this was radiator cooled. My mistake. Just air intake vents and engine. Lots and lots of engine. And to save on space, you got your exhaust ports right over here. Down right about where this little plug of steel is. Right about in front of that. And probably right, see if I can get an angle on it. Right behind the turret to right about there in this general area. No, driver's on this side, my mistake. That's the radio operator, that's the driver. Right through there up till right about where that little spot is. That's all your transmission and drive shaft, stuff like that. It's a pretty long little thing. Oh yeah, before I completely forget about it, weaknesses. Derp, what the hell am I doing? Making a fool of myself for YouTube. Anyways, here you have your radio operator with his hull mounted machine gun, typically an MG 38, I believe. Air cooled, belt fed machine gun. Here you have your driver, your commander. Well, actually, I believe he's the co-driver. Commander, gunner, and your loader. Yeah. No? Tiger had a separate radio operator. Okay, I'm having a complete derp. Commander, radio operator, gunner, loaders around in here somewhere. No, that's not right. Yeah, that would have to be the... Okay, I'm making a total derp. Radio operator, who is on this tank. Jan Hoffman. The driver is Valdemar Lemp. Ew. Right there. The commander, Max Schart, or however you pronounce it. Please don't shoot me, German viewers. Right there. Your gunner would be right around in here, and your loader is typically in between the commander and the gunner, because the shell rack's back in here and back along the rear firewall. So yeah, that's the Tiger's crew. Weaknesses: the machine gun turret, driver's port, tire lower glacis, which when hit tends to set the tank on fire. No real reason or explanation why that is. Like I said, you have a little bit of ammo back in here, but the majority of it, the ammo storage, is back in this section right around here. Usually around the back part of the turret ring and along the rear of the firewall is where your ammunition was stored. On the eastern front, a lot of crews used to like stacking shells in any available place that they could, just so they could stay out in the field longer and not have to resupply on their ammunition as often. Most of the crew's belongings would be kept in little compartments like this. Later variations had little, they called it dragon armor, that would come around here, attached to the front where you see those crane bolts, and just wrap around, connect onto there on both sides. Crews would more often or not stuff as much stuff in there as they could. That's a loading hatch for the ammunition to go in and spent cartridges to go out. More often than not, you'll see that open in documentaries. You see it a lot with the Panthers, where it's right there on the back. Typically, even though every nation highly recommended against it, you'd find track link on known weak areas of the turret, the sides, the front, like you see here. Any space available was used for storage. A common theme for tankers is they'd more often than not cook their meals on the back of these grates. And that was true for tankers of all nations. Like if you're just coming back into your deployment zone or your field HQ, whatever, the commander would go report, get the kill tally, etc. Maintenance guys and the crew would come out, start doing maintenance on the vehicle, and while they were waiting, they'd set their meals on these grates above the engine deck if it wasn't being serviced at the time, and they'd cook them right there in the back of the tank. Who needs a fire? Crews would also typically sleep under their tanks, right around the back of the engine bay, especially after a hard day's fighting. For one, it's hard cover. Two, it'd probably be fairly warm under there, provided you didn't have a crack in your lower plate and oil and whatnot leaking all over the place. A little thing I recently found out that I never knew is this back diamond piece right here, that little plug right there. There'd be a handle that they'd stick in there, and it could be used to help start the engine. which was, and you see that a lot on 19 early cars, really. Basically, cars from, I want to say the first generation of cars, up until maybe the 50s when fuel injection started to come about. You'd stick a little crank bar in there. Well, not necessarily little on a tank, but you'd turn that so many times. Guy inside hit the starter button, and if it fired, it fired. If you didn't, you rewound the engine and tried again. No idea how many times typically it might take or was recommended. No idea. It was just a little thing I found out recently. So, yeah. Anywho, I've prattled on way too long this video. This has been Asmodeus, and I'll catch you next time.